Shalom. I'm Rabbi Michael Panitz of Temple Israel of Norfolk, Virginia, speaking to you from the pulpit of our congregation. Today's rabbinic message is called A Message for Us from Yesterday. We learn in astronomy that when we look out into the depths of space, we are looking back in time. A spectacular stellar explosion seen in 1604 by the astronomer Johannes Kepler, for example, actually happened not in 1604, but 20,000 years ago. It took the light that long to travel the vast reaches of space to get to the Earth. More mind-bending still, the supernova of 1987 that revolutionized our understanding of the life cycle of stars actually happened about 168,000 years ago. Clearly, the past can impact us afresh today. That is also true with the classics of literature. Our sacred books were written for an original audience 2 or 3 millennia ago. But those ancient words have traveled through time and continue to speak to us now. You could simply listen to their message and absorb it as best you can, but knowing the details of their origin will likely broaden your understanding and help you to internalize the guidance that those words can provide. The book of Deuteronomy, with which we Jews will be engaging from this week, it's now the beginning of August, through the end of the upcoming high holiday season in late October, presents itself as a series of speeches given by Moses just before his death. The traditional dating of Deuteronomy, therefore, is to the Bronze Age, approximately 3¼ millennia ago. However, 2 centuries of modern research have shown us that while the memories behind the book of Deuteronomy may truly extend to the early generations of our national experience, the book, as we have it, shows telltale signs of having been brought together between the 8th and the 6th centuries before the Common Era. Permit me a personal reminiscence on this subject. I studied for the rabbinate at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. One of the brightest stars in the constellation of Jewish studies professors teaching at that school during my student days was the Bible scholar Harold Louis Ginsburg, HL, as we all called him. 40 years ago, when I was finishing my rabbinical studies, our school was astir because of a book that he had just published entitled The Israelian Heritage of Judaism. He coined that word, Israelian, to refer to the northern kingdom of Israel as opposed to the southern kingdom of Judah. His epical work was the most profound study of Deuteronomy since the rise of critical biblical scholarship in the mid-19th century. By means of a close examination of the word choices and the diction of the book, Ginsburg demonstrated that the oldest core of Deuteronomy originated not in the Bronze Age, nor in Iron Age Judah, the seat of the dynasty of David with its in-house priests and scribes, but in the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel. This may seem abstruse, but it actually helps us to clarify the message of the book. I will show you how this is so. And then I will show you what this says to us today. Monotheism became the common heritage of our ancestors only in stages. That was true in Judah, but even more so in the northern kingdom of Israel. Most of the kings of Israel worshipped other gods along with the God of Israel. Only a few brave voices, prophetic voices, denounced what was the common knowledge of their day. Among those spiritually keen-sighted critics of the contemporary consensus were the first authors of the book that would ultimately be Deuteronomy. In the last quarter of the 8th century, before the Common Era, the Assyrian Empire invaded and destroyed the kingdom of Israel. It attempted to destroy Israel's southern neighbor, the kingdom of Judah, but it failed. Under the spiritual guidance of the prophet Isaiah and the political leadership of King Hezekiah, Chizkiyahu, Jerusalem withstood the Assyrian siege. Professor Ginsburg's research into the language of Deuteronomy decisively strengthened a scholarly conjecture. It is plausible that among the refugees from the Assyrian invasion who were able to find their footing in the kingdom of Judah were the Israeli religious leaders who authored the first draft of what became Deuteronomy. Here's how events would have looked from their perspective. In contrast to the vain reliance of Israeli kings on the pagan gods, the Judean fidelity to the God of Israel had been rewarded by the survival of that state. Deuteronomy reflects this belief, retrojecting it to the period of Moses. In the book, the tribes of Israel have been saved from the Egyptians, and their continued salvation would depend on their continued fidelity to the one true God. By means of this historical recreation of the saga of the early history of the people, the entire book serves as a manifesto for covenant renewal on the part of the kingdom of Judah after the repulse of the Assyrian invasion. Now, didn't this message sound naive and unconvincing a century and a half later when Judah itself was conquered and its people exiled by the Babylonians? Doubtless, there were Judeans who simply gave up their faith and assimilated into the Babylonian majority. But an inspired remnant understood that the message of Deuteronomy could also be applied in the case of defeat. Even in exile, the book asserts, this is Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1 through 3, we can still find regeneration if only we return to God. And here are the words of the book. When all these things have come upon you, the blessing and the curse that I have set before you, your heart shall turn back among all the nations to which the Lord your God will make you to stray. The Lord your God shall turn back your former state and have mercy upon you. God shall turn back and gather you in from all the peoples to which the Lord your God has scattered you. The basic message of the book, therefore, is that your values have to be true enough to accompany you both in victory and in defeat. This is where the book speaks to us today. The confident optimism of Americans 30 years ago that we had prevailed in the Cold War and that we would benevolently preside over a better world order is now shown to have been an exercise in arrogance. Russia, China, the fanatical jihadists of Iran, the butcher of Syria, and who knows else, are creating a powerful axis of states unconstrained by any morality. The international turmoil of this day shows that we are in the wilderness, not in the promised land. Deuteronomy tells us to live by these important values. Don't trade in basic rights for the false promise of success as a minion of a dictator. Don't let any executive be above the law. Don't let the law become divorced from morality. Find the correct balance of justice and humanitarianism. All of those lessons could have been spoken by Moses. In Deuteronomy, they are the lessons ascribed to Moses by a generation of loyal Jews. Those same lessons could have been written in 5782 or 2022 for those who prefer the secular calendar. Certainly, we need those lessons now. Shalom.